Mamas and mamas to be, this is the podcast that is going to take you into the Hen House. We are talking all things intuitive and mindful living and mothering, as well as preventing birth trauma and healing from birth trauma. We are bringing you real talk, real connection, real community, and hopefully some real inspiration as well. We are your hosts, Chantel Brienne and Andrea Sjoberg. And if you are ready, it's time to jump into the Hen House. Hello, welcome back, everyone. Welcome to season 3. We are so glad you're here. We're so grateful also for your patience, because I know it has been a hot minute since the end of season 2 back in December. But first things first, I would like to introduce my lovely co-host for this season. This is Caitlin.
Hello, excited to be here.
Yeah. So she's so graciously stepped in for this season, while Chantel, who is our normal co-host with me, is on kind of a sabbatical from podcasting. I had let you all know a little bit at the end of season 2, but just to give you the update, she's just kind of dealing with some really serious health issues for her daughter, and is really focused on that. However, they are doing much, much better than they were back at the end of season 2 when everything had just kind of started. So that's the really good news. But definitely, if you have thoughts or prayers or well wishes for Chantel and her family, that would be lovely. And otherwise, we're going to jump in talking about the birth of the family, the birth of the mother, some self-growth, and we'll see where we go. But yeah, so.
Well, I'm really excited to be here. Of course, my well wishes for speedy healing to Chantel and her family. And I'm excited to be joining you. I had lots of fun when you and Chantel interviewed me back in, I think it was season 2.
Yes.
And it's exciting to be here for a few more episodes this season. I want to preface, I often have my daughter in the room with me. So, I'm not just a weirdo who can't make eye contact or look at a camera. If I look like a wanderer, I'm just watching what a little one happens to be doing. Currently, it's unfolding all of the diapers from her box. And we'll deal with that later. But I'm really excited to be here. Season 3 is going to be lots of fun. And as Andrea said, we are kicking it off with talking about the birth of the family. So I want to start, we're going to do a little bit of almost question answer conversation today on this first episode. So Andrea, I'm really curious, what does the birth of the family mean to you?
Oh, you know what? It's so interesting because I had honestly not heard of it until a while after becoming a mother. So I had heard definite discussions of the birth of the mother and kind of how that begins, perhaps in pregnancy, or definitely once your child is born and you have this reintegration of self and this rapid expansion of self and all of that. But it had really never, it was kind of interesting because I kept saying, oh, my family, like referring to my parents or my sisters or something. And all of a sudden, my husband, he's like, Andrea, he's like, yes, that is your family, but we're your family. And I was like, oh, I'm like, I know that. I just never had associated that word with that. And then I had been talking to a friend. I had a bit of a major conflict with my parents, but I had called my one friend who lives in Atlanta, and she had said, she's like, people always think that, I love those little noises, they're so cute, that the birth of the family happens when you become a couple, so to speak. And she said, yet for most people, the dynamics change so much more. It's once the first child is born. It's like then officially that's the new family. And the other family, yes, still family, but it's secondary.
Yeah, I love the way you're explaining it, because I know you and I, as we were prepping for our episode, we're talking about some of these ideas, and I couldn't agree more. When it was just Ed and I, Like, we would talk about his family or my family, but I don't know that
Yeah.
we ever truly use the word family to describe our household as us, the couple.
Yeah.
And as soon as our daughter was born, it did. It shifted naturally to our family was
Yeah.
the 3 of us and our dogs, but, like, the 3 of us having another human, a baby in the mix, shifted those dynamics, and it's interesting to see, um, just like you said, yes, of course, my parents and my siblings are still my family. Of course, my aunts and uncles and cousins are still my family. But in the same way that, say, at the holidays, I would prioritize seeing my mom and dad and siblings over, all the aunts and uncles and cousins, were that
Yeah.
to be a choice. Now, the
Yeah.
priority is what are we doing as our little family? What traditions do we want to set? How do we want to celebrate holidays? Or what kinds of things do we want to do, myself, Ed, and Lennon? And then how do we involve grandparents, aunts, uncles? And then how do we involve our extended families? And we learned in the last year and a half it becomes really complicated,
Right.
especially if you're trying to see everybody. Yeah.
Right, it gets definitely very complicated. Now, in my case, I'm going if I'm perfectly honest, there are some of my personal first cousins that I have literally never met in my whole
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
because my mom's family is so big. There's just so many. There's some I have not seen since I was maybe 7. And even on my dad's side of the family, well, we have seen all of the family. The last time actually would have been at my grandma's funeral, which I would have seen all of the cousins. But I'm going, like, I'm not calling any of those cousins. Like, I wish them well, but I'm going, I will never see you all again until the next wedding or funeral, basically.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's so interesting.
you
Like,
know.
so there's my mom, my bonus dad, and my dad. And I'm really fortunate. I grew up with a beautifully blended family. Everyone gets along. Um, from my dad's side, always at the holidays was the big aunts, uncles, cousins, even to the extent that I grew up just with the word cousins and aunts and uncles. And it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I maybe understood some of those aunts, uncles, and cousins were actually my great aunts and uncles, or my
Okay.
second cousins, or even now I have cousins. I call them a cousin, but they're my cousin's child, right?
Right.
Um, so they still, let me turn that on for you. They still make the effort to do, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and occasionally, like almost always, a summer barbecue. And then there might be a birthday party here or there throughout the year. From my bonus dad side, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving. From my mom's side, we don't have any aunts or uncles living still. So a little bit less, obligation, if you will, going on there. But we do still have our dinners together, our meetings together. And so it's neat to see now with Lennon, like just navigating how all these parts fit together. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it can be a lot. And I do love that you mentioned that family can look a lot of different ways because, like, so I got a little scratch in my throat. For you and I, we both gave birth to a child, and that is what created the family.
Yeah.
However, there can be a lot of other ways too. So it could be through adoption or through fostering. And
Yeah.
sometimes the family dynamic changes, right? So it's like kind of once this family is begun, there's all these different ways it looks. So you have kind of the initial reevaluation and reconfiguration with, let's say, your parents or your siblings or whoever, as kind of you become this new family and your whole priorities and everything in your world changes,
Yeah.
and then things can also change as you go on too. So that family kind of it's like this continuous rebirth of what family means and
Yes.
how it interacts and how the pieces play together.
I feel like with that, there comes, and I'm a mom. I can't speak to the dad's perspective of this, but I think, especially as a mom, there's a really big element of surrender that comes with all of this. Surrendering into all of the changes that our bodies go through as we're growing a life. And again, like you said, that can look a lot of different ways. I'm sure there's surrender involved for all of the ways that a family is birthed. Um, Surrender into, in a first year, especially with our new little ones, how incredibly dependent they are on us. Surrendering what you think that might look like, what your expectations on self, home, how much you're going to get done every day. Um, Surrender into recognizing, hey, I'm probably not going to be able to please everyone. And so, what is most important to me? What are the boundaries that I'm setting? And then it's kind of neat to think of, and I'm grateful my mom and I had some of these conversations throughout pregnancy and into my first year. She's experiencing as a grandma, like, she went through all these years of everything was about her children. Now her children have all flown the coop, and it makes certain times of the year really challenging because the magic of Christmas morning is kind of gone. Like, it's just her and my dad, and just navigating what that looks like. And so I'm recognizing that even now, as I'm in the exciting, we're building our family, we're creating our traditions and so on, but recognizing that there's going to come a point where this little being that is so velcro needing me is going to grow up and make a family of her own. And like, I hope there's a place for me in it. I hope that she's not just like, yeah, cool, we'll see you when we see you, mom. What do you mean you
Right.
don't need me anymore?
Right. Well, and I think it is really challenging for parents, and I think about that sometimes too. Like, I'm going like, it's so hard for me to even think about her trying to date or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's like she's almost a year and a half. Ours are very close in age.
Yeah,
And but it's like, I know I'm not there yet. And I'm like, that's hard to think about. I'm like, I
we
can't go there yet.
we were
But
visiting friends.
and it's like, I really hope that as a parent I do a good, and like, not to say that other parents, anyways, not don't do a good job if this happens differently, but I'm like, I really hope that I am the kind of parent who can rise to the challenge of, one, creating a bond that's really long lasting and adapting to the different phases of life
Yep,
and maintaining the relationship in really good ways, so that when my daughter does fly the coop, which is the natural and normal and good way of doing things,
yeah,
that there is still a relationship, even though it looks differently, and there still is a lot of trust and a lot of whatever, and that when she has children, I can find a way to be truly very helpful and very supportive and very kind and encouraging of her,
yes,
and allow for the evolution that happens, for her to say, hey, I love you and you did a wonderful job, and there's a couple things I want to do differently.
yeah. It's funny you mentioned that part. I was just thinking about that today. I I think I've heard it in a Brené Brown book, and I don't remember which one. She talked about she chooses to believe that everyone is doing the best they can because in her mind, believing anything else is quite dismal. Um, And so, ever since hearing that, I choose to believe everyone's doing the best they can. And so, exactly that. I think my mom did the best she could, and there's things I will choose to do differently. And while it's really hard for me to imagine that there's anything that, she could do better than me, just kidding. I'm sure that she's going to be like, hey, mom, these parts were great. These parts I'm going to do different. And more surrender. More surrender.
Right, right. And so I think that there is a lot of surrender. And there's a lot of surrender, I think, also as a new mother, to say, you know what, it's okay if other people are upset with me.
Yes.
It's okay if they disagree with me.
It's
It's
okay.
even okay if they think I'm a lousy parent
Sure.
because I'm doing things different than they did, or different than they think it should be done, or different than whatever, right? Like, to just let go of the judgments and be like, you know what? As long as I'm showing up and doing the best I can do and being intentional and loving and kind and taking care of their needs and showering them with as much love as I can in every moment,
Yes.
I mean, I'm doing a darn spectacular job then.
Right.
So,
As long as they are safe, they are fed, they are cared for, like, it's very much so going to look different from person to person, and I think you're exactly right that the judgment needs to go, and also I'm gonna choose to let some of that go from me.
Yeah, right. And I guess that falls into the self growth too, of becoming a mother, like the birth of the birth of the mother bear, the birth of the mother who's actually living life in the way she would wish her child to live life
Yeah,
is a real process and does require self reflection and then a lot of grace and all of that
yeah.
too, because we're all imperfect humans,
Mhm.
as much as we may wish otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even just with other family or with parents, like I've heard so many new moms who say like I used to be really close with my mom and we're not anymore because there was a conflict because I asked for something to be done a certain way
Mhm.
and there was a refusal or there's an argument or there's whatever, and all of a sudden there was a bit of a breakdown that no one could quite let go of and now we're not close, and I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And so so I think it's what you pointed out is good too, to yes, keep your boundaries in mind and say also have compassion for where they're coming from too.
Yeah. And I think with what you were saying, um, we do hear that a lot. We do hear of these breakdowns in relationships. And I think that communication could go such a long way. And it's kind of one of those things that's maybe easier said than done because I think a lot of us think we're really good communicators. And we might not necessarily always be good communicators. Um, but I think that a lot can be said for a conversation of, hey, in order for us to maintain a relationship, I would like to know that I can come to you and I can let you know when I'm happy with something, when I'm upset about something, when I'm venting about something, and that you're not going to take that defensively or as blame, um, and so on. That I can come to you safely, and that I can know that you're going to hear what I have to say, and that potentially your feelings are going to be hurt because that's okay. You are entitled to your feelings, but that those hurt feelings aren't going to cause a breakdown in the communication or a complete shutdown in the relationship. Um, and that's something I'm really grateful. My mom and I had a conversation about that, about being able to communicate openly and clearly. And it's still a work in progress for me. I think sometimes I communicate well, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I could have said that better or said that differently, um, or maybe if I had sat with my feelings and reflected a little bit first, maybe I would have communicated something totally differently. Maybe it didn't matter to me the way it did in the moment, and so on. Um, but I think it, it is that self growth. It is that taking time to look within. It is asking, is this of utmost importance? Do I need to say this? Is it going to bother me if I don't say this? And if the answer is yes, it's going to bother you if you don't say it, then you have to stick with it and communicate whatever that thing may be. And whether that's with a parent of your own, whether that's with your partner, whether that's with um, an aunt and uncle, whoever, a caregiver, it could be a lot of different people. But if we don't have healthy communication where we are making sure to emphasize what's important for us and that there are going to be boundaries and these are what they are, um, I think that can lead to a lot of complication down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really like what you said too. The communication piece is something I've definitely felt like I've been pushed to get better at
Hmm.
and to communicate more than I would have in the past, which has been shocking for a number of people.
Yeah, I can hear that.
There's definitely a few people who are like, I don't know, Andrea, you used to just be okay with everything, and I think I like that version better. It's like, well,
She's
I'm
gone.
I'm sorry, she's kind of gone. This is in the evolution of the self and the continued self growth and whatnot. This is, and I'm going. There's someone who matters
Hmm.
immensely to me, like more than I have perhaps ever even mattered to myself, and that's perhaps a different issue, but
I hear you. I hear that
and
one.
and I want her also to see, a parent who can politely and kindly stand up for herself and who will advocate for the child,
Yes, I was
when she can't advocate for herself or, whatever gender the child is. But
sure.
like I don't want to be so flexible and so okay with everything that I'm not happy with it, but whatever. Let me just not create a conflict and have everyone have their way. And it's like that just can't work anymore. And so it's been really an interesting growth um, for me personally to really develop the courage to really speak up and to be willing to have conflicts.
Yeah.
And some of them have gone better than others. You know, but to also just say, you know, and I've had a lot of people say to me also, like, well, tell me your reasoning and I'll tell you if you're reasonable and then I'll decide if I'm going to do what you want or not.
I don't think
And
I
it's
need one.
like, yeah, I'm sorry. I am her mother.
Yeah.
Like, and that's my reason. And you can get on board or go away. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
like that's kind of where I'm at a little bit. And that's been really hard too, because I'm like, wow, I really have to like learn to stand in my power more
Yeah.
so that, you know, and sometimes I also have to say, okay, you know what? This could be done one way or another way. I don't know that there's a best way.
Hmm.
So my way may not be, you know,
Yeah.
and that may not be worth creating a conflict over. So let me carefully pick my battles.
I hear that. I have such a good example. We were at a friend's house the other day for a play. My friend's daughter is three and a little bit, and Lennon is a year and a half, and they have such a beautiful relationship, the two of them. Her daughter just loves mine so much and is so caring, and understands that she's younger, and she might need help with certain things. And so they were going to go upstairs to play in her room, and I said, I love that she like helps her and is mindful of her. And then somehow we were talking about baby gates, and I had said, like, I just love that I can see that she's so competent on the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend said, "Don't let her hear you say that," like quite aggressively. And I went like, "What?" And I said, kind of, my face must have indicated that I was confused. And she said, "You just said she's so incompetent on the stairs." I said, "No, I said she's so competent on the stairs that it makes me feel safe, like her watching Lennon go up the stairs." And she goes, "Oh, I totally heard the wrong thing. I'm so sorry." And then, like, we went about our day, and we actually met the next day for coffee. And both of us had been overthinking this exchange. And she said, "I'm sorry that I kind of was abrasive about what I thought I heard." And I said, "I don't think you have anything to apologize for, because what you perceived I said, I wouldn't want someone saying that in front of my daughter. I also would be like, 'Excuse me, don't tell my daughter that she's incompetent. Like, how dare you? Shut your mouth.'" And I said, "So I think that you had an extremely appropriate response for what you perceived happened. It just wasn't what I actually said." And as soon as we identified that it wasn't what was actually said, it was rectified. It was all good. Like, move along. Um, but I think that could have gone really differently, right? Like, had we not both had enough self awareness to go, "Hold on, I think there was a miscommunication. Let's talk." She could have felt like you insulted my child, and I could have felt like you were rude to me. And that, like,
Yeah.
friendships end over less.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that is so true with all relationships. And I think also with our partner, with things, it's like we have to be so careful to be able to take a step back,
Yeah.
like out of our own anger or whatever. And especially in the middle of the night or when, you know, things are intense
Oh, when we're hungry.
or hungry or we have to pee or, you know, but just having space for everyone to have big emotions.
Yes. Or
And
small emotions or no
you
emotion.
know,
Sometimes it's
right?
just
But to
silence.
have space to communicate what they need without going, well, that's not right. And and that's really an interesting thing too of like, okay, let me actually listen to you
Mhm. Let me hear
and
the words you're saying.
and believe that what you have to say is worthy too. And let me like take a little step outside of my own perspective and try and come at it from it neutrally because maybe we're saying the same thing we're something similar, like we're maybe more in agreement than we think.
Yeah.
But rather we're all caught up in the misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And I have found that has happened a lot this year too, mostly with my husband, where it's kind of like, okay, we're actually, after like 20 minutes of like snipping, it's like, okay, we're actually saying the same thing. We actually are kind of on the same page on this. We're just misunderstanding each other. And then because we're tired or overwhelmed or whatever.
Or in the moment, we're just so focused on you have to hear what I have to say that we aren't listening. And then when we do stop to listen, we go, oh, we are saying the same thing.
Okay. Right. And so it's very interesting with the birth of the family how each relationship shifts so much. It's like even within our partner.
So we've kind of been talking about like doing things differently. So for parents who want to be intentional and mindful and maybe do things differently, maybe break certain generational patterns, if you will, what are your thoughts, your experience around this, and like any tips you might have?
This is something I put a lot of thought into, especially when I was pregnant and early on. I had really put a lot of thought into this, like, what do I really want to focus on? Like, what are the areas I really, really want to pay attention that I'm doing a good job for? And one of those is like building up her sense of self worth to know that she's always worthy and regardless of anyone's opinions. So even if this person or that person or whatever says something unkind or says their opinion or whatever it is, that she says, okay, that's their opinion. Their opinion does not determine my worth. Their opinion does not determine my success. Like, I am a good person no matter what. And I'm going, like, for me, that was one that was really, really important to me, probably one of the most important. And I think for me, knowing what I want to prioritize, so just knowing kind of what I wanted to prioritize makes it much easier to one, be really mindful to speak into that and to catch myself when I'm falling into old patterns or patterns that I don't think are as healthy, whether it's because I'm modeling or whether it's because I'm saying something or whether it's because someone else is saying something, but to really pay attention to that. So for me, that has made a difference in just being very clear what's ultimately the most important to me. And then it also kind of lets me let some of the other things fall to the side a little bit and say, okay, let me not, because you can't control other people. And however, you can ask for certain people to say, hey, like, and this is one too. There's been a lot of comments on my daughter's weight. And I'm going, she's 1.5. When did this become a big deal? But there's been a lot of comments like, oh, the little rolls or oh, this or that. And I had one person like, I don't even want to say the word, but the DIET. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's things like that too, where I'm going, no, 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 no. Like, do not let your old lady issues, don't put those on my daughter.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a no.
I you were saying about like knowing her inherent value and worth and how that's like, not dependent on other people's opinions, and so on. We've been really mindful of, and I notice it all the time. People are so quick to give compliments, and critiques about physical attributes. She's so cute. You're so pretty.
Yeah.
Like things like that. And so I
Yeah.
try to be really intentional that every single day I fill her up with, "You're so kind, and you're so funny, and you're so smart," and
Yeah.
reminding her about all of the things she is that are so much more than what she looks like. Yeah, she is
Yeah.
cute, sure.
Yeah.
I don't want her to build her entire sense of self-worth around cuteness.
Right.
I
Right.
want to know that she adds value. And
Yeah.
just by being herself, she adds value. So that's a big one. We've tried to be really mindful with, um, and I know I said before, I think my parents did lots of things to the best of their ability. And I think there's lots of things we know now that we know differently than before. And there's a good chance that by the time our kids are our age, they'll know different things then too. Um, but as we've introduced food, um, we've tried to be really mindful with what types of food we give her,
Mhm.
and giving her healthy whole foods, and
Mhm.
think about what she spends the majority of her day doing. Like, we are a relatively screen-free home when it comes to her. She
Mhm.
gets to FaceTime grandma and grandpa, but
Yeah.
like she doesn't know who Bluey or Coco Melon or any of
Yeah,
the
goodness. Yeah, I don't do any cartoons. Now, I will admit I did binge watch all of Downton Abbey when she was very, very little.
I spent many
You
contact
know.
naps watching something for myself while she was asleep. Um,
Yeah.
and to me, there is nothing wrong with if that's someone else's decision for what they need to get a moment of peace or whatever it is. But it just hasn't been the choice in our house. We have, now that she's a little bit older, done a family movie night once or twice. Does she really get it? No. It's like the Jungle Book, like the 1960s
Yeah.
version.
Right, exactly. We did watch Cinderella. I think
Nice.
it was on Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And I was like, "You know what? I'm like, I'm just in the mood to watch something
Yeah.
because I'm just in the mood, so we're gonna do that." And she mostly played and didn't care. And I'm going, goodness, I hope she grows up. I'm going, when did I become a little bit more addicted to TV? I don't know. But as a child, put the TV on and you'd find me in the other room, like, "Phew, I'm out of here."
Right, and so that's we put this movie on, and she spent most of the time playing on the floor, bringing
Mhm.
her stuffies to read them books on the couch, and she's really, really into music, so when songs would happen, she'd be dancing, right?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
awesome. I hope it stays like that. Um,
Yeah.
we've tried
Yeah.
really hard to include her in the things we do day to day, and part of that was by necessity. I went back to work at 4.5 months, and so she was coming with me, so she's become very, in my opinion, she's very socially well integrated because
Mhm.
she spends a lot of time in the office. Um,
Yeah.
and she's great at entertaining herself. And I think there is something to be said for us in terms of, um, because she plays with her toys and she has to be creative and she has to use her imagination, or whatever the case may be, as opposed to just like, here's the tablet while I'm at work.
Right.
Um,
And that's a big one, I believe, for us too. Um, Sometimes I forget. I'm like, what am I prioritizing? I've forgotten. But
yeah,
but that's definitely a big one. Like very imaginative play, like even simple toys, time outside,
yeah.
which I honestly want to get better and better at. I mean, we go outside every day, but I would like to get where there's more and more hours outside every day.
We were
Um,
really good at outside time before the winter deep freeze hit here. I'm not
yeah,
sure where all of our listeners are, but where I am in Winnipeg, Manitoba, we just came out of like a good 4 weeks of -20 to minus.
really, really, really cold. And that's
Uh,
Celsius. That's
yeah,
Celsius, yes.
and I'll say we've had a great winter, but it was really cold for a handful of weeks there. And so when it was taking more time for me to get her dressed to go outside than we actually spent outside, it was really hard to go
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, I have to admit there was a few days here too. Now they weren't deep freeze like Winnipeg, um,
Relativity.
but it was relative. And I'm kind of going, we do have some warm clothes for her, but we don't necessarily have clothes for like the super cold days because there's like two of them in a year here.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? We're just going to stay inside because it's not worth the fight
Yep.
to take 20 minutes to get you dressed, to walk halfway around the block,
Yeah.
have screaming, and then have to go back inside.
Yeah, I hear that. But before, like for us, before the deep freeze, outside time is really important to me. Um, Outside time and her feet actually touching the ground and getting sunshine
Mhm.
on your body and playing in the grass. And it was really exciting in the fall as I was like, pulling out my annuals from my flower beds and so on, that she was
Mhm.
part of all of it. And did she eat
Yeah.
dirt? Yeah, she sure did. She ate a lot of dirt.
Yeah.
And you know what? So what? It was great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it's our yard, the current yard that we have now. I do pay attention for pesticides and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm all for eating dirt. However, I would rather not eat glyphosate.
yep.
So I'm like, I'm really big on avoiding pesticides for her. One, on the food that she eats,
Yeah,
which has also been a bit of a conflict with some people. They're like, oh, our food's not good enough for you. And I'm like, I'm sorry, she cannot eat Cheesecake Factory avocado egg rolls. She just can't. One, they're spicy. Two, she just can't.
yeah, like, yeah, I hear you.
And I'm like, I get sometimes I will sneak a piece of chocolate, and more she's wanting it now. And so I'm going, okay, then I have to change what I'm eating if I want to continue to give her no sugar,
That
which is another one. We're not doing sugar.
that
But
has been huge. We've I think for the first year we actually did no sugar. Um, After that, she does have some here and there. It's not with every meal. It's not all of her snacks are not sugar filled. Or if they do have sugar, it's like from a fruit, right? It's
yeah,
but not added processed sugar.
right,
But I think it's really neat that I'm learning. Hey, if you're gonna have this, and she sees, you can't really justifiably say like, no, this is only for mommy. Like, why? Well, why? Because I know one day it's gonna come. Well, why do you get it and I don't get it? And outside of like obviously something unsafe for a child like
mhm,
alcohol, um,
right,
what is my reason? Because it's bad for you. Well, then why are you eating it, mom? I can already hear it, right? I can hear what's gonna happen.
right,
So it has really forced me to make some better decisions for myself, and also to go, okay, so if you want some treats in the house, what are treats that you would be okay to give her a small, appropriate size piece
right.
of if
Like
she
a
wants
little
to have
taste.
it?
Yeah,
Yes. And so, it's you fill your cupboards differently when there's little eyes watching.
right,
And I don't think we
yeah,
were horrible to begin with, but I'm definitely aware that I don't want to be a hypocritical parent who is like, I'm just going to go through a drive-through and eat things that I would never feed my child, um, and then expect that
yeah.
expect that they're going to eat well.
Right? Yeah, no, exactly, right? And so I think it's interesting because when you have, or even potentially kind of conflicting things that are important.
Hmm.
So, like for me, it's yes, time outside is very important, and I want her to get her feet in the grass. And our backyard, we actually have a road that's much busier than we thought it was going to be, that's
Oh,
right behind us. And then all of the neighbors' yards flood, and the whole road floods into our yard. And they spray heavily
yeah,
with, like, you can literally see the neighbors spraying Roundup in their yard. And then the HOA has hired someone to spray the whole back of our property with
right.
Roundup and stuff like that. And so then with all the flooding, I'm going, that literally all ends up in our yard. And every time it rains, we get a lake. And so I'm going, I don't really want her wading through,
No,
one, completely soaked in sopping wet grass, like halfway up to her knees in
and then there's
water.
just in it, yeah,
And
all
I
the water.
know that there's not good stuff in it.
Yeah,
And so I'm going, okay, but I want her to get her feet in the grass, and I want her to walk, and I want her to have time outside.
yeah,
And she's not happy only in the carrier anymore. So I'm going, okay. I'm like, Andrea, that means you got to get your butt into the car, pack her up, and you all are going to parks every
yeah,
day.
yeah.
And so you're going to find one that's close, and you're going to go do that.
Good for you. Because it takes
And
extra steps, right? Like, you want to be intentional and you want to make sure that what's happening for your family is what you want. That's in alignment with your values and your priorities. And it's not always easy.
right. And so it kind of then becomes the question of like, okay, am I being too strict?
Hmm.
Am I being too intense about this? And do I need to let go just a little bit? Or is it important enough to me that I'm going to say, okay, I need to take this next step and do what's hard to get what I'm aiming for out of it?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and am I willing to also be corrected if I say something, and, well, which kind of back to what you had said before too about so much focus on appearance. But sometimes I'll tell her that she's cute like 10 times in a row, like in like a minute. Now I'll
Probably is.
also tell her that I love her 100 times in a minute. And we did play a game where it was like 1,000 kisses, and I'd give her 1,000 kisses as quickly as possible.
Oh, I love this.
But then sometimes Simeon will say, and she's so smart. Don't forget to tell her she's smart.
You're smart too.
Right? And it's like, oh, that's right. And I'm like, you know, or he'll say, oh, you're so smart. And I say, well, let's not do it as a judgment. Let's just say, I think you're so smart. And he's like, Andrea, semantics.
You said, is me achieving what's in alignment for me? Do I need to like be more flexible, or do I just need to do the thing that's hard? And it was that really stuck out for me. I think that there is a lot when it comes to mindful and intentional parenting that it's not always going to be the easy route. In fact, it's often not going to be the thing that's easy. And there's going to be a lot of days where we have to do the things that are more challenging. Is it more challenging to pack your kid up and go to the park than to go in the backyard? Yes, of course. But is it going to be more in alignment with your goals to let your kid run around and play in grass that's not sprayed with chemicals and potentially causing some really serious long-term health effects? Yeah, it is. So I feel like every day we have to make these choices of, am I going to do what's easy and comfortable, or am I going to do what's more in alignment and maybe more hard? And slowly I think that those things do become easier because they become part of our routine. We find the park.
Mhm.
We now that's our thing. We go there, or we find the snacks that are in alignment with us. That's been a big one for us lately. We've been venturing out a lot more, but now we have someone who um, is more interested in eating more regularly, and she doesn't only want milk anymore, right? Like she wants some food.
Right?
So,
Yeah.
what are some easy on the go snacks that don't require a ton of prep? Well, guess what? You can't have it all. Like
Right?
either there's going to be some prep or some research or some investigation, or there's
Yeah.
going to be some crap that you probably don't want your kid eating.
Right,
So,
right. And again, for most parents as well, to literally go out and pick the eggs from your own chickens and milk the cow and mill your own flour and then bake whatever you're going to bake and have it freshly made just that day. So it's even low in histamines. And
probably unrealistic.
you know, it's like it's not going to happen. And so there is this, as time goes on and as needs change, it's kind of like, okay, maybe we need to adapt.
Yeah. So maybe I'm okay with. We just went through a big investigation on fruit bars. Which
Mhm.
ones are we okay with? Because, there's lots out there, and there's lots that I'm like, absolutely not. She can't have this one. And there's one that we have right now. I won't say any of the brand names. There's one we have right now that it's not my favorite, but it's a lot better than a lot of other options. And I recently was introduced to potentially a new one that might be my new favorite. It has one ingredient that I don't love, but one out of a lot of
Mhm.
really great things. It comes with a price, but
Yeah.
we'll see. Unfortunately, I had to, invest in some very large boxes that should get here this week to find out if she even likes them. Hope she does.
Right? You're like,
um,
fingers crossed,
yeah,
please.
yeah, please be good. Um, but it does take some trial and error and some okay, this of the 10 ingredients, one thing here I don't love versus of the 50 ingredients, one I do like.
Yeah. And I think that that's a big thing too, is being willing to shift.
Yeah.
Like even initially we had said, "Oh, I think we're going to do cloth diapers." And then she was born,
Yeah.
and that went out the window immediately.
Yeah. Fair.
And we got like, and I had said, "I'm not doing cloth for the first month." I'm like, "We can reassess after that." And we got to that point and I was like, no, it's just not happening. I'm sorry. We're going to just get the healthiest, most
Chemical free.
chemical free, good for her, good for the environment, as best as we can diapers, and go from there.
I have to laugh. I also said we're doing cloth diapers, and then it wasn't happening the first handful of weeks, and then the first month passed, and then I thought, okay, I can do this. Ed was not fully on board, so our compromise was like, while he's at work, I'll do cloth diapers all day, I'll do laundry, whatever, and when he's home in the evenings, like we'll switch. Cool. Um, somewhere along the way, when we would go out, it became a lot easier to just have disposables when I would go out. Um,
Mhm.
and now I would say for the last, it's been a while now, we've been on, she wears disposables during the day and she wears cloth overnight. And
Okay.
um, we've had a handful of elastics have started to go. So I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago. I washed the bedding every single day because I had to, replace some liners because they were just leaking. Uh,
Mhm.
the trade-offs, the trade-offs. Who likes
Yeah.
washing their bed every single day?
Right. It's a lot. No, and yeah, I totally get it because for a little while we had one set of diapers and it was like the healthiest diaper
Yep.
that I could find, but it was leaking. And it was like every night we were having a leak through, and we'd have to get up, and it would be wet in the bed, and we'd have to change her clothes, and there'd be screaming. And it got to be like, okay, if I cannot figure these out,
No.
it's just not going to work for me, and we're going to have to go to something else because it's also the stress levels, and that
Yes.
counts too.
Yes.
So,
Yes. I have definitely learned that on this plight to be incredibly mindful, low tox, as healthy as possible, that if the stress that's being caused or induced by the decisions is greater than the potential harm from the decision, then maybe we need to reevaluate that this is not working for our family.
yeah,
And it's so neat how all of these things do come back to that central topic of the birth of the family, because I feel like just like with child rearing, it's also family rearing, right? Like we are learning what works for our family and what doesn't, and the ability to go, hey, we could have had this idea for what our family is going to look like, but this actually doesn't work for our family, and so we're
mhm,
going to pivot to this next option. And with that might come judgments, might come people being like, well, I thought you said you were doing la 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 la, or oh, I can't believe you would give her that. um, you said no, blah blah blah, or I can't believe how much work it is for you to do, blah blah blah. But ultimately what matters is that it's working for your family. And
right,
whether that I
yeah.
didn't know this word before, I learned it on the internet. Whether that you are crunchy or scrunchy or silky, I'm learning all these fun new terms. um, all that really truly matters is that you're doing what's best for your family,
Right,
and that
right,
you
and
are comfortable with the decisions you're making.
right, and I think there's an element of it too of having fun.
Yeah,
Like, of actually just having some fun to be a parent,
yeah,
because it's such an amazing thing, and to have fun as a family and in all of the relationships that come with that, and to
mhm,
say, "You know what? I could get all bent out of shape, but you know what? This is small. I'm gonna let it go because having fun is gonna be more important."
yep,
Like, okay, she found a tissue box at someone else's house and she's pulling them all out, but they're Costco tissues. So I know that they have, whatever brand they're like,
yeah.
whatever brand it is, but they're gonna have some PFAs on them and microplastics and whatever. And it's like, okay, well at home we try and get some that don't have microplastics. But you know what? It's like,
I can't micromanage all of it. I can't.
it's like
I
it just
try.
becomes not fun for anyone
Yeah,
if everything is such a big
thing.
deal. It's like you have to find the balance. And I think for those of us who do want to go low tox, it's like there's so many things that are an issue, but you can't control everything. You can't avoid everything.
Yeah.
So it's like make the decisions in your home,
Mhm.
let some other things go,
Mhm.
and just try and have fun because no one wants to be stressed out about every little thing either. Like
No.
that just doesn't work either. And and I feel like that then gets in the way of other intentions of giving your child a really happy and exciting childhood and letting them explore and be adventurous and
Yeah.
right. So it's like finding the balance, I
Well,
guess,
and
of all of that.
I think the potential exists that if our children's childhoods are completely um, permeated with control over every single food, every single potential toxin, that that could lead to like such a rebellion down the road of like, I was never allowed anything, so now I'm gonna do everything.
Right?
So I think it needs to be fun, and I think that there needs to be understanding for me why we're making some of the decisions we're making. Not that we're going to explain to an 18-month-old why we're doing things, but so that down the road there can be understanding of why choices were made and why certain choices were changed or pivoted, or why we maybe don't do things in our house that other people do in their house, and that
Right.
everyone is entitled to their own decisions and their own family making.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. For your family, what's one tradition that you kind of either are keeping that came from your family of origin or that you're creating new or both?
Okay, so I feel like traditions often can be sandwiched with holidays. Um, And I feel like that's where we see a lot of traditions come out. So I know, like, at the holiday time, we really wanted to keep like a Christmas morning in our house. So that is something that we are keeping. Is like our like preserving our family for Christmas morning. Something that I learned on the internet that oh no, that's not true. It was a client I see in the office shared this with me. A tradition that her family did. She has two grown kids. She had told me early on that she always celebrated their birthdays and their half birthdays. And that
Okay.
the half birthday celebration, like, it's not like you were having a big birthday party or anything like that, but just within their family unit, they'd make their kid's favorite meal for dinner on their half birthday and like maybe have a special dessert and maybe a small gift. And there was something about that I really liked because I feel like um, how fun to have another special day of the year that where you're celebrating just you. And so, even though Lennon might not fully understand it yet, we celebrated her 6 months and we had her big 1 year birthday. And we
Mhm.
just a couple weeks ago had a little half birthday celebration for her. And it was really fun. And I look forward to continuing that little tradition as we go on. How about you?
That is really fun. Um, it's funny that you mentioned half birthdays because when we got to Mother's Day this last year, I was like, I don't like it. I don't want to celebrate it. Like, I'm happy to celebrate my mother,
Hmm.
but I want nothing to do with this day, me personally. I'm like, it's too much pressure.
Okay.
I'm like, there's too many like eyeballs on me. I got way too many messages on Instagram. I'm like, I don't like this day.
That's
And I'm
fair.
like, totally weird, but that's okay. And so we're gonna do that on my half birthday instead. So
Nice.
Mother's Day is officially on my half birthday.
Love it. I love it. Um,
So that's kind of one. And I didn't know that that was going to be one I wanted, but I was like, I am not up for celebrating Mother's Day in May. I'm just not.
I like it. It's neat how, some of these things we learn as we go. Um,
Yeah. And
I thought it
then
was
trying,
really, really sweet on
yeah.
Valentine's Day this year. Um, it was Friday. So Ed had
Mm.
gone to work and we came downstairs in the morning. We came downstairs and there was a card for each of us and flowers for each of us. And I really, really, really appreciated like the thoughtfulness of him showing his love for me, but also as the most important man in her life right now,
Hmm.
giving her an example, like being the example of what a good man looks like, right? And no,
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have flowers on Valentine's Day. I'm not just like prioritizing a commercial holiday, but it was so sweet that he like wrote her a nice card
Yeah.
and told her like nice things about herself and expressed how much he loves her and that she had flowers of her very own. Like,
Yeah.
go
Well,
dad,
that's
you did a
really
great
special.
job.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really sweet.
So
Yeah. I
I'm
love
grateful
that.
for it, but I hope he continues that
Yeah.
tradition.
It was, so it was actually, it's not a tradition from my family, but at Christmas, so my family always did like something really special Christmas Eve and then Christmas morning. That's kind of what we did, and then food and stuff. And so we're kind of continuing that from my side of the family, but then from Simeon's side of the family, he always celebrated the 12 days of Christmas.
Oh,
And so we did this year like a tiny little gift for her or something like special
yeah.
each day for all of the days. Wait, starting, I don't know, it
The 12th
ends,
to the 13th, or it starts on Christmas.
it starts on like the 20, I think it starts on the 24th, but it goes until like January 10th or something
Okay.
ish.
So
I
right
don't
around
remember.
like the Ukrainian Christmas or the Orthodox Christmas.
Yeah, something like that. And so, but he always celebrated that. And so I thought, well, that's fun. We can do just like something tiny for her each day. So
Yeah.
she had her own little Christmas tree. And then each morning there'd be just a little gift underneath it for
Yeah.
her. And then on the last day of Christmas, he had bought her books. And then he bought me books too, which I was not expecting. And so I thought, well, that's really sweet.
Yeah. There's
And so that was
so
kind of a
many.
surprise. And what did I get him? Absolutely nothing.
Sometimes it goes like that. There are so many of these ideas on social media, and I feel like it's like the blessing and curse of social media that there's lots of ideas. It can also feel overwhelming sometimes, and maybe when you're having moments of like want make you feel like, oh, I'm just not doing enough. And I try to really avoid that. But there's a few really cute ones I've seen. Around Christmas, I've seen like advent calendars with books wrapped, and so each day leading up to Christmas, your kid can open a new book. I've also seen, instead of like a traditional advent calendar with like a candy or something, it's different things you can give or do in those days leading up
Okay.
to Christmas.
Yeah.
Um, and there's lots of these that aren't just holiday specific, right? Like you could do things any time of the year. Um, there is something we did when I was a kid at birthday parties. There was a season of them where like you'd have your birthday party, your friends came over, and my mom had made a menu. And so the menu would have like, let's say 10 items on it. Okay. And
Mhm.
then you got like an order card with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 10 lines. So you had 3 lines for your appetizer and 4 lines for your main course and 3 lines for your dessert, let's say. And then the items on the menu list included things like fork, knife, spoon. If it was spaghetti, spaghetti,
Mhm.
your drink, your dessert, whatever it may be. And she would translate it into a different language. So your menu might be in German, and
Okay.
you as a kid would read and decide, okay, I want these 3 things here and these 4 here and these 3 here. And then my parents would bring out the meal. And so you may have got for your entree or your appetizer your fork, your knife, and your spoon, which meant that when your entree came out and was soup and spaghetti and meatballs, you didn't have any utensils. Uh, and so it just made for something really fun. And I want to say we did it several years in a row. Like she made a German one and a Tagalog one, and she just did it in different languages
Yeah.
many times.
And
And
that's amazing. That's something I definitely that we've been prioritizing too is language and culture and music and
yeah,
just
well,
kind of the experience of things
yeah.
and the playfulness of things.
Well, I can't wait for Lennon to have her first, crazy meal supper, messy supper party where no one actually speaks the language that the menu's in, and no one knows what they're getting, and it's just going to be a free for all. So that'll be a fun thing to carry on.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. That sounds really fun. Oh, well, Caitlin, this was fun. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's been listening. And we can't wait to share the rest of the season with you.
Yes, it was so much fun to be here, and I can't wait for the rest of what season 3 has in store. We'll see you guys soon.